This is why you never watch one person or one group of people to get your information about things that are going on in the world. I like Asmongold for the most part because he has a no BS attitude towards things that are happening in the world, and for the most part I find that his takes on most things are pretty reasonable. But man, he is going off the deep end on this whole Epstein thing, as are a lot of people, because you know it's an important hot button issue that people are really intrigued in, and they want answers and they want these things. Fine. It is my opinion that we human beings have this really bad tendency to, we have this really bad craving to connect dots, right? There's dots out there and we want to connect them into some sort of meaning, and regardless of whether those dots actually should be connected, we're going to connect them anyway. So when you start getting long lists of things that seem too circumstantial to be anything other than a conspiracy, you're going to start connecting into the dots to create the conspiracy that you want, because it's much more satisfying to see that. The purpose of my video today isn't necessarily to dive into that, because I've already spoke my piece about that whole thing. I believe in the idea that conspiracies are far more rare than we like to believe that they are, that the world is a lot more boring as far as nefarious plots and stuff like that than we think that it is. Today I want to talk about the misconceptions about things that people propagate into the world, not understanding the facts. Amongst the various things that he said during this video that I was watching, which is a clip from one of his streams, he said something to the effect of Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy from so far away. And I'm like, as soon as I heard that, I was like, wait, what? No, I don't think so. So I went and looked it up, and the Warren Commission itself, the governing thing that figured out all of the official details, anyways, of what happened with all of that, stated that Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy from 265 feet. Now that's a 3-digit number, and it sounds like a lot, until you start to realize that that's only 81 meters, and meters are roughly equivalent to yards, which means that Oswald shot Kennedy from less than a football field away. Now, I can tell you personally, having served 11 years as a United States Marine, that the shortest distance that we shot with iron sights, no scopes, iron sights, the shortest distance that we shoot and that we're expected to be, one shot, one kill, deadly accurate at that distance is 200 yards. 200-yard line, 300-yard line, and then a 500-yard line. Iron sights, no scopes. We didn't like my entire time in the Marine Corps, we didn't have this ACOG thing they have now. Iron sights, right? Iron sights. That's it. That's all we had. Well, technically it was the circle one, but my point is it's iron sights. We didn't have scopes. We didn't have magnification. We didn't have nothing. 200 yards. That's over twice the distance that Oswald, a former Marine before he did all of this stuff, that's twice the distance that he needed to shoot with the weapon that he had using iron sights that he would have been required to basically shoot from as a Marine when he was in. This is why you have to be careful how much you listen to people and how much you get perspective from anybody. Me, Asmongold, any of these popular figures who are out here commentating on politics. This is why sensationalism is not the way we should be trying to figure out how to deal with things. Because while revolutions are important when the stakes really matter, if all you're getting is a bunch of reactions and false information about things, then, it's going to rile you up in a way that you don't necessarily need to be riled up in a way. I mean, to say that that was an unlikely shot to make, I mean, I don't remember specifically what the distances were when we did our, when they switched over the rifle training into more of a combat-oriented thing. But I have to imagine, we did moving target shots. We were required to do moving target shots at a distance that wasn't much less, or probably was about the same distance as what Oswald did. With iron sights, moving targets, dudes holding up targets, doing a walking pace. And it shows a lack of understanding about what the realities are of the world when you try to turn this shot that Oswald made against Kennedy into this impossible shot that nobody could have made. Like, no, that's easily makeable by any Marine who passes basic marksmanship. It just is. It just is. The question is, why was he able to have that line of sight? That's a reasonable question. But to say that the shot was hard to make, to say that the shot itself was hard to... I could have made that half drunk because of the training that we received and the requirements that we were supposed to be able to pass just to pass basic Marine Corps marksmanship. And Oswald was a Marine. So it's just, you have to be careful when you're especially if you're a big content creator, throwing out random things like this that you don't know anything about, because it wasn't an impossible shot. It wasn't even close to an impossible. It was a relatively easy shot compared to a 500-yard shot you're supposed to do with iron sights, no scopes, no nothing like that. I mean, you have to hit some of those targets to pass the Marine Corps quals. You can't accrue enough points of that, at least, unless you shoot every shot before that perfectly. You have to hit at least a couple of targets at 500 yards to be able to pass the stage 1 quals for the freaking marksmanship requirements. 500 yards. 500 yards. Way, way longer than what this is. So to assume that at 81 meters or 265 feet that he couldn't get the shots that he got with the training that he had, even just basic marine marksmanship training, is just, it shows a lack of any basic knowledge about any of that kind of stuff. And that's, that's what I want to talk about, right? That's what I wanted to talk about in this video. You can question why the route was planned in a way that didn't have anybody covering those lines. I would say that the Secret Service didn't really have too much of a reason to worry about those things as much back then, because, the last assassination before that had been, I don't know, decades before, and they just were kind of lax about it. You could see that as just conspiracy, sure. I don't know. But again, I would like to just reiterate that I think most of the things that we see happening in the world that cause us to question things is just incompetence and stupidity. Creating this grand conspiracy and fueling the flames of people's imagination to try to get them to rise up against this and rise up against that. I get it. We're all unhappy with the state of our country. We're all unhappy with the BS that goes on, the absolute corruption that happens all the time in our government. But there's a difference between, greedy people taking money for this or that and a worldwide global conspiracy on this one specific issue with Epstein. I mean, sure, it's certainly within the realm of possibility, but again, I think that Bondi was incompetent in listening to the reporter when they asked her about the client list and just was talking about files. I think that Trump is getting impatient with the situation, and that's why he answered the question the way that he did, regardless of how guilty it made him sound. I think that the people who said they were going to come in and give us all this information didn't know what they were talking about before they got into office, and then they get into office, and the information that was available to them when they got in was like, oh, we don't have anything to give anybody, and now we have to freaking try to massage things so that we don't look like idiots. I mean, all of these things are reasonably explainable as people just covering their ass because they were fucking stupid. I mean, that's how I see it. That's how I see it. I think that Jeffrey Epstein was a horrible human being. He was massively evil, and he surrounded himself with people who were massively evil as well. Evil calls to its own. That's the way that it works. I will never try to diminish Epstein and the things he did in the world and the people who helped him do it. But until I see something concrete that makes it clear that there absolutely is some kind of a conspiracy going on, to me, it just looks like dumb people trying to cover their ass as best they can because they made promises they didn't know they couldn't keep, got into office, and then there was a big nothing burger there in the first place. And now they're trying to fucking do damage control because there's nothing there. There's nothing there. You can point to a million different things and try to connect dots because that's really what our brains want to do. But sometimes in the real world, the dots only seem like they can be connected and they just can't. And until you get the thing that makes it reasonable to connect that dot, i.e. actual evidence that gives you a firm pointing of the direction to connect to that next dot, it's all just speculation. It's just speculation. And you're pissing people off for no reason. So, you can get on the internet and start hounding about this and whining about that and talking about conspiracy, this or that and the other thing. Or stop drawing attention to yourself and trying to make money off of this stuff and go do some investigation yourself instead of just wildly speculating about things you don't know anything about. I don't get on here and say anything unless I have at least absorbed enough knowledge to feel like I have a competence to speak on it, right? It's this react thing that we've all become accustomed to is drastically harmful to our society. It causes so much more division than we already had because nobody does any research. None of these channels do any research. They see something, it seems to be one thing, and they say something about it. But then you hear someone like Asmongold say, like, I like Asmongold for the most part. On most of the things he talks about, I agree with him most of the time. But when I hear him say the words, this crazy long distance shot that Oswald, it's like, then you don't know what you're talking about. And too many people just don't know what they're talking about. You know, I'm not going to make the whole expert argument because I think the whole expert class is, you know, they're just as easily corrupted as everyone else. But you either know things or you don't. And the moment you start saying that Oswald's shot was crazy, like, then you don't know anything about what you're talking about. You're just talking out your ass, and that's just it. 81 meters is something that any trained Marine who has been able to pass basic marksmanship could make half asleep. It's not a hard shot. It's really, really close. So that's what I wanted to say. You know, not everybody knows everything, and I don't necessarily, you know, I know I'm criticizing him for basically talking out of his ass on something he doesn't know about, but at the same time, you know, if he's talking out of his ass on this thing, then clearly he's talking out of his ass on a lot of other things, and even though the logic that he's coming up with based off of what he knows makes sense, your starting point dictates what your ending point is, and if you're starting with a bunch of bullshit, then you're going to end up with a bunch of bullshit no matter how good your logic is. That's just the way that it works. So I would encourage anybody who gets online, and especially those of you who have a very large presence, to refrain from saying things that you have no knowledge of, because you end up, to people who know what they're talking about, it makes you look dumb, and to people who don't know what you're talking about, you're misinforming them, which is what it was. I know there's this whole anti-misinformation thing that we all hate. Agreed, right? You should be able to say what you want, but at the same time, you're going to get criticized when you say stupid shit, and it was a stupid thing to say. So anyways, this is an overly long video to say that, A, no, it wasn't that hard of a shot. I could have made that shot really easily because basic Marine Corps marksmanship. I had to do it for 11 years. Come on. Little hole, a little circle, maybe that big for a bullseye, and most of the time at 200 yards, you're hitting that damn thing. And then, you know, fanning the flames of controversy and all of these things without any evidence at all, just going off of hearsay of what you heard here or what you heard there, all it does is just rile people up for no reason. There's plenty of other real things to get riled up about, rather than, oh, we didn't get the Epstein stuff we wanted. I understand that you wanted it. I understand that you feel you were promised it, but, you know, if they gave up all the documentation that they have and it didn't have what you wanted in it, then too bad, so sad. Move on to the next thing. Epstein's dead, and if you have evidence against the other people who... Epstein's dead, Ghislaine's in jail, and if you have evidence against anybody else who did that stuff, prosecute them, put them in jail, and then that's it. Like, you have no there's almost certainly no documentation out there that links Epstein or any of his associates to a government organization or the CIA or any of this other stuff. Right? I've said it before. They're not going to leave that stuff out there for people to find. So, get the justice you can get, and then move on to something more important, because this is a chapter that just needs to be closed. It just really does. And I know a lot of you who are zealots about this whole thing don't want to hear that, but there's way more important things going on in the world than whether we know the truth about Epstein. You're never going to know the truth about Epstein. You're just not. Even if we know the truth already, we're never going to be sure that we know. So, just enough. Enough. So, that's all I wanted to say. Just calm down. Just calm down. Hit that like button, subscribe to help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and I'll see you for the next one.